Hey beautifuls. So I have just been writing out my why and my intention for the workshop that I have coming up. It's called The Art of Loving Men. It's a woman's workshop. And I ended up getting quite emotional about it. And I just wanted to share, I was like, I think I need to share this. And so here I am, right? And really, I just want to share, why is it that I actually teach women how to love and understand men? What's the big why behind that? So I really wanted to just touch on that and share a little bit about that. So I'm going to do another live stream on how I transformed my relationship to men. That's not going to be this one. It's going to be a separate one because it'll be a bit longer. But what really was underneath all of it was this feeling within me that I just want everyone to feel deeply loved and deeply seen. To feel that, because that's what I desire. I desire to be deeply loved and I desire to be seen. And I suppose I've sought that from men, and of course it comes from within self. And I feel like one of the big reasons is that there's so many differences between men and women, that we can keep ourselves separate simply because we don't understand our differences, and we will make the other person wrong or blame or make ourselves wrong or not enough or not loved or not lovable, when really maybe that person is showing love, but it's just not in the way that we might perceive it to be or that it should be, right? And so how can we see that perhaps someone is wanting to deeply love us, but that we're not seeing it, or we're not allowing ourselves to receive it because it might not be in the way that we perceive? So one of the reasons, one of the things that brings me a lot of joy is when I'm running a workshop, and this is for both men and women, and I see people get ahas, and they're like, oh my God, how can I have not seen this before? And they're just and they're writing their notes and they're getting so excited, and it's like they're having this big brain, this is oh my God, this makes so much sense. And because I know when that happens for me, when I'm learning, and I just get this aha, how much joy and excitement that I get, and then I can see everything in my life that I've been doing that I didn't know that I was doing, that has actually prevented me from seeing this. And that really, perhaps, now that I have this different perspective or change, when that thing happens to me, I will be able to see it differently and see myself differently. So one of my greatest joys for teaching what I teach is when I get to see people have these moments. And one of the things that also brings me joy is when I see, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, when people end up feeling emotions, whether that's happiness or joy, but whether it's tears. So for me, when I see people expressing sadness, I see this is a really beautiful thing, because I know it's releasing pain. And in a way, it brings me joy, because I know what's on the other side for that person, and I know they're getting a deep healing that they need to get. So one of my intentions for my workshop is to have this happen, is to have these aha moments, is to have these deep and profound healings. That's one of the intentions that I'm setting, basically that the intention is for people to be touched, moved, inspired, and completely blown away and transformed, and to come out a different person and see things completely differently, and have a whole new perspective on how they see relationships and how they see men. And for the men that come into this space, for them to have healed around their relationships with women. So one of the reasons that I teach this is because when women can understand men better and see them differently, then they can drop their walls, and they can actually receive men for who they are, and be more open to receiving their love, and to be able to face their vulnerability, their own vulnerabilities, and have those hard conversations perhaps that they've been holding back from, that they haven't been able to fully be themselves. So ultimately, one of the things is actually helping women to be more fuller versions of themselves. You know, especially if they've been in stories about men, or from past experiences, or from conditioning from society, it's like, what happens when we drop those stories? What happens when we let go of those thoughts that are disempowering? And, you know, there's common ones, things like, you know, men are assholes, or one that I heard growing up, well, all men are bastards. Some are just lesser bastards than others. Or things like, he just wants one thing. Men have ulterior motives. Like, some of these stories we might play out, or, you know, they don't really care about my feelings. Like, and it's usually from continued patterns. And so what if we step out of those stories and what's possible to see, right? And so when we stop assuming that a man might be doing something because they're a certain way, then we can see maybe that's just him being a man, and it may not actually be personal to us, all right? And I'll give a quick example, is that, you know, men can often be very, very focused. And sometimes when a man is very focused on something, he switches out everything else in his life, what's going on around him. And it means he might not pay attention to a woman when he's very focused. And a woman may get offended by that and think, oh, he doesn't care about me. But what might be interesting is that maybe he's doing the thing that he's doing to provide for the woman, and it might just not look like the thing that the woman wants, right? So this is just an example, and he's showing love in a different way. So, and then, you know, things like, well, he's never present, he's not there for me, this kind of thing can play out. And yeah, so it's just looking at these things of like, okay, men can be very, very focused, where women don't tend to be as focused and tend to be able to, are often doing different things at once. And I'm generalizing here, but this is fairly common. It's also how our brains are actually wired. Women have what's called diffuse awareness, and men are more single focused, okay? It's not to say that they can't focus on many things, but there's more so, right? So just a quick example. So I'm really passionate about sharing like more juicy little tidbits like this, that sometimes we'll just flick a little something, and it's like, okay, actually, if I stood back and I looked at this, what's really going on here? Like, instead of jumping to, oh, he doesn't love me, or he doesn't care about me, this kind of thing, right? So the other thing is that the reason why I love this is actually teaching women how to hold themselves more fully. When we're in a world that conditions us to look for someone else to hold us, to look for a man to hold us and to keep us safe, and to rely on that at times, or to complete us, to make us happy. So one of the things when we start to learn about men is that part of this is actually tapping in and tuning into our own inner man, our own inner masculine, and looking at, well, the parts of me that I need to learn to love, because if I'm putting things on someone else, where's that in me? And learning how can I hold myself instead of expecting someone else, putting expectations and then getting upset when those expectations aren't met, and hold myself through that, and mature and evolve my own inner masculine energy to really be able to hold myself, yeah, which then creates more opportunities to be vulnerable, because if I'm holding myself, then I'm going to feel more safe to be vulnerable, because I've always got me to hold me, right? So that's another piece to that, is learning to, if I hold myself, then I can be more of myself, because I'm going to be able to express myself more fully, right? So, what else? I've got quite a few things here. I'm not going to go through all of it, but this is like just a lot of my why, right? Of like, and this is, it's like, it feels like this feels really juicy to me. Like, I get really excited about it. And I love, like, I'm obsessed about learning about as much as possible and then applying it in my relationships with men. And it's still a constant process for me, constant learning, like, you know, yeah. And so ultimately, I feel like there's a prevention here. Like, I want to prevent women and men, but like for this, from going through unnecessary pain and suffering, right? Because if we come in with a story about a man, right? If we come in with a belief or a story about a man, then we may create our own suffering, right? We may, by assuming that he's misbehaving, we get angry and disappointed, and assuming that he's doing something when he might not actually be doing it, and then we're creating this pain, and then later on find out that actually maybe it wasn't true what we were thinking, right? So when you can understand the way that men think and are wired and how it's different to us, then you can start to sort of prevent this unnecessary suffering that you might put yourself in, right? And the other piece to this is about learning to feel, and to actually feel men, to feel their sensitivity, to feel their hearts, to see them for who they are, and their longings to also be loved, to also be desired, to feel wanted, to be able to see that, right? And know that sometimes the way they show up that may be hurtful is their longing to be loved. Yeah. So, ultimately we're all just longing to be loved. We're all just longing to be seen, right? So the other piece to that is, do teach women how to help men to awaken and evolve more, and how to help them open their hearts. So I want more of that too. I want more women to learn how to hold space for men, because so often we're looking at, we need a man to hold space for us. He needs to hold space for my emotions, and he needs to, this kind of thing. Like, we're expecting him to always be there for us. Well, what about being there for a man? What about supporting him, right? Sometimes when he needs to go off and work on things, instead of expecting him to be there for us, know that maybe he needs to do that, right? That's going to fuel him more. And then he can be more present, right? So, so it's like, how can we make it safe for a man to open up to us, instead of going, oh, he's not opening up to me, like, why doesn't he open up? It's like, well, how can I provide this safe space where he feels like, hey, I want to talk to her, I want to share with her, because it feels safe for me. I'm not going to get my balls cut off if I open up about this thing that I felt really vulnerable about, and I'm scared if I tell her that she's going to get upset, because the worst thing that, I really don't want to upset her, because all I want to do is make her happy. And this is the thing that was like a massive epiphany to me with men, is when I discovered how much men really want to make a woman happy. And this might sound kind of crazy to some men that are watching this, that I think most women are completely unaware of how much you want to make us happy. To me, I was like, really? Men are really it's that important, Meanwhile, I'm over there in the corner trying to prove myself and please a man, and he's over here trying to impress me and make me happy. And it was just when I realized, wow, I could see how many times a man was trying to make me happy, and I wasn't even allowing myself to receive it, because I didn't feel worthy, or I thought I'd have to give something back, or there was something in the space that wouldn't even allow him to make me happy, and then I'd complain about something else, this kind of thing, right? And so this was massive, to show this to others, other women, feels beautiful to be able to share and to have them see that. So yeah. And to bring women together in these spaces, in these workshop spaces where we can see each other, and there are different practices and conscious relating practices to be able to hold this. I can see the light is reflecting my selfie stick on there. To be able to hold this and create these containers is really, really beautiful. To create these conscious relating containers and guide these different practices where it's so safe for both men and women to open up and be vulnerable, and then give those and have them then take them out into the world, into their relationships, or into whether it's romantic or work, or to take these out into the world just feels so beautiful, to be able to pass these on, these gifts. that I've learned and experienced. And yeah, so, and then knowing that when we're healing these different, when we're healing these past traumas and wounds we have around our relationships, around men, women, when we're healing these, that it's not just for ourselves, that it's for our ancestors, that it's for future generations, that it's for the collective, right? That it's just not for one person. It's, you know, when you're healing one person, I think it's like you're healing for like 200,000. You're lifting the vibration of like 200, I think something like that. It's in the hundreds of thousands anyway. Other people. Let's see if I can adjust this. That sun. I love the sun though, so we're just going to keep it. You know, this ripple effect as well, right? Yeah. So the other thing is that my other why is that I love sharing. I love talking and I love being received. And I find it fun. Like, it's juicy for me to share this stuff. And I get to see some juicy stories and some sexy stories. And I know that stories are actually the best way that we learn. So, because this is how we learned before TV, before radio, we'd all sit around a campfire and tell stories. So this is wired in our DNA. So I love that I just get to show up and share my stories and people learn from it. Like, how cool is that? Like, I just have to show up and be myself and share my stories and be vulnerable. And it inspires people. Like, how cool? Like, seriously, how cool? Like, that's pretty cool, right? Like, I think that's really cool. And so, and the other piece of that is, like, if I'm showing up like this, how many other people is this going to inspire to do the same thing and show up from their vulnerability and share their stories? And then that ripple effect, and then those people sharing their vulnerabilities is going to inspire someone else and someone else. So this is the beauty about vulnerability, of when we show up in our vulnerability and share our heartfelt stories, like the ripple effect that creates in others. Yeah, so I know that when I drop into my vulnerability, particularly in workshop spaces and facilitating, that it is going to ripple effect out. Like, it just is. So, and I guess this happens every time I jump on a live stream too. Like, I hope it does. That's my intention anyway. Yeah, so I think the thing I wrote here, which I put in bold because this is when I started feeling a bit teary, was to share my heart and vulnerability and inspire others to do the same. To just share from my heart and the vulnerability of that. And when we share our heart and vulnerability, that's when we allow ourselves to be seen. You know, that's the place for love to land. We give place, we open the heart to give more of a place for love to land. Because so many of us are closed, our hearts are closed. So, yeah, my intention is to open hearts and deepen the love and be seen. And I think one of the ways that we keep ourselves most separate and most blocked and walls up is particularly between genders, is particularly between the differences, right? And this is not just genders, but when we somehow separate ourselves from someone else, right? We have a judgment, you know, this person is wrong, this kind of thing. We have some kind of judgment and we separate ourselves and we lack that vulnerability, when really we're just longing to be seen just like that person, right? We're just longing to be seen and loved. And so what if we could end the separation and choose to see that person as a soul, as a being, as love, the love that they are? What if we could choose to see that? And what do we need to look at to create that? And so this is why I love workshop spaces, because this is what we get to do, right? Especially in conscious relating or tantra workshops. It's constantly creating these spaces for us to... Oh, I'm getting very light now. Creating these spaces for us to see those vulnerabilities and see the ways that we keep ourselves separate. and to push past those and to speak. Oh, okay, over here. It's a bit better. Okay, I'm just totally gonna move. Okay. Yeah. Now I'm more like, okay, that'll do. Is to, yeah. What's my train of thought now? It's okay. I'm doing my diffuse awareness. So, yeah, so that's basically it. That's my why for doing what I do, and why I particularly love helping women understand men. And I also do reverse too. I help men understand women as well. So, yeah, if you're feeling called to explore this, you know, feel free to reach out to me. The next workshop I'm doing is going to be the last one that I do for a little while, as what I'm kind of taking